Please join me now in a spirit of prayer and meditation. After our spoken prayer, we'll have a time of silence, and then we'll sing together Spirit of Life, hymn number 123, which is also printed in your order of service. We'll sing first in English and then in Spanish. Our prayer this morning is by Justin Osterman. Oh God, it's hard to know what to say, hard to know what to pray sometimes, when fear, sadness, anger, and confusion come over me. This world is so beautiful and so terrible at times. People so magnificent and so malevolent. It's hard to know how to feel with all the wonder and horror happening at the same time. I want to make things right, fair, clear. I want to make people kind, merciful, and just. I want to end violence, heal brokenness, prevent pain, restore hope. My longing is so big, and I am so small. Sometimes despair speaks to me in poisonous whispers. Oh God, be that still small voice that speaks of love, comfort, and hope. Be my calm amidst the storm. Be the fragile, beautiful flower that catches my eye to remind me that seasons come and go in nature, in life, and in history. Be the kind eyes that remind me that there are open hearts and hands all around me, waiting to love and help if I will only open myself to them. Remind me in every way that I always have the power to choose how I will respond to life. And then help me to choose wisely, act justly, live peacefully, and embody every value and virtue that I wish to see in the world. Help me and every soul gathered in this sanctuary this morning to be and become our best selves in thought, word, and deed, today and every day of our lives. Amen. Our first reading this morning is by Bruce Marshall. A friend told me of her entrance into electoral politics when she ran for office in elementary school. One thing she particularly recalled, it was a terrible breach of etiquette to vote for yourself. That was true in my school too, whether by show of hands or even by secret ballot. It was considered tacky to cast a vote for yourself. The cool kids would never do that. This lesson was driven into me with such force that when I became aware of national elections, I wondered, did the candidates actually vote for themselves? In retrospect, I wonder why that was such a taboo. If you go through the effort and the risk of putting yourself up for office, surely you must think you're worthy of your own vote. Why was that so bad? One reason was the dread of being thought stuck up. Another was our belief that if we really were good enough, people would know it. We didn't think we had to deal in self-promotion. It was an innocent view of the world. But in growing up, most of us learn that sometimes we've got to vote for ourselves. When no one else will stand up for us, then we've got to do it ourselves. when we have a belief that no one else is adequately articulating or defending, then we have to do that ourselves. When we are being hurt and no one seems eager to rescue us, then at least we can count on our own vote. My friend lost that big election in elementary school. She lost, you guessed it, by 1 vote. The person she voted for won. Never let yourself lose by that 1 vote that you didn't cast for yourself. And I have a group of people who are going to help me with my second reading. If you could come to the front, please. And I've asked them to just quickly introduce themselves to you and how long they've been a member before we start our reading. So that's how we'll start. So just quickly go down the line and say your name and how long you've been a member.
My name is Lawrence Crisera. I've been a member for 25 years.
You can give the mic down, yeah.
My name is Mary Durago. I've been a member since last year.
My name is Keith Hunt, and I've been a member for 13 years.
I'm Ellen Anthony. I've been a member 4.5 years.
My name is Sharp Priolo. I've been a member for 37 years. I'm old.
My name is Jane Lee. I've been a member for 33 years. I'm not as old.
My name is Will Hildreth. I've been a member for 4 years.
These are the rights and responsibilities of membership that I've asked them to read to you. And this is a handout that we give to all of our new members when they join us during our new members class.
Because we are a democratic community, members are collectively vested with responsibility for the congregation. Members may vote at any congregational meeting, be elected to the governing board, and participate in any activities of the congregation.
Because we are a covenanted congregation, members have certain responsibilities to the congregation and to one another. They are best fulfilled by
Regular attendance at worship. Weekly worship cements the bonds of community and keeps our attention directed to our highest values while nurturing our spirits.
Voting at congregational meetings. Responsible participation includes imagining the needs of the entire congregation, rather than focusing only on one's own needs or desires. Consider how issues affect all members of the congregation, as well as potential members and others in the world outside the congregation.
Making financial contributions. Not only does this provide for the support of the congregation, but it also survives as a spiritual discipline. Many Unitarian Universalists aim for a modern tithe, that is, giving 5% of income to the congregation and another 5% to other organizations and causes that represent their values.
Contributing time and talent. Congregations work because their members find ways to give of themselves, whether through singing, financial management, educating children, sharing their passion for social justice, organizing, cooking, greeting. The list of tasks goes on. Finding ways to give back that nurture your own soul helps to avoid resentment and supports your own growth.
And lastly, spiritual growth and development. Working deliberately at your own spiritual development is a gift to the congregation and to the larger world.
Thank you all. So we get to vote on Tuesday. I remember the first time I ever voted on my own. I was living in Somerville, and there was a polling place a few blocks from my house on my walk to the train. So I stopped on my way to work and waited in line, and when I got to the front, I gave my name and address, and they were like, "Yeah, this isn't your polling station." What? I was so confused. I didn't realize there were multiple polling stations, and this was definitely closer to my house than the address they ended up giving me for my real polling station. I asked if I could switch. They said no. I didn't have a car, so I had to walk over a mile to get to the place where I was registered to vote. And then when I got there, the line was huge. It snaked out of the building and into the parking lot. I was definitely going to be late for work. I remember that day so clearly. It was awesome. Living in a city or a large town, you never get to talk with your neighbors. You tend to only interact with the people you work with or your friends. This random cross-section of humanity all waiting together in line to vote, it filled me with a sense of such civic pride. The confusion and the walk and the waiting all reminded me of what people have sacrificed for the right to vote. My struggles were insignificant. People have given their lives for the right to vote. And I have inherited that right without any work at all. I think I grew up a little that day. I imagine that the little girl in our opening reading grew up a little the day of her first voting experience, too. She didn't vote for herself, and she lost. It's a lifelong lesson, especially for women, to learn to vote for yourself. You have to have confidence and trust in yourself, or the world never will. If not even you put your vote in your own box, someone else will always win. When I vote on Tuesday, I will not see my own name on the ticket, thank God. I am not cut out for politics. But in a way, I will still be voting for myself. I will be voting with the courage of my convictions and trust in my own assessment of our nation and what it needs. I will be voting to protect my rights, my body, my marriage, my health care, and my planet. I will be voting with trust in the truth that my voice matters and my vote matters. I will be voting for myself. But I will not only be voting for myself. There's a saying that's been going around a lot this election season. Perhaps you've seen it. I think it first went viral in Britain, but I haven't been able to exactly pinpoint its origins. It says, "Think of the most vulnerable person you know and vote in their best interest." Think of the most vulnerable person you know and vote in their best interest. So I will also be doing that on Tuesday. Because this democracy thing is not about ourselves alone, right? We, of course, think of what is best for ourselves and for our families and for those we love. That makes total sense. I really understand people voting based on the hopes and dreams they have for their family, and also their fears for what might change their own way of life, what seems safe. I totally get that. I am that person. And I also know that democracy requires us to balance those personal needs with the needs of all society. Because we are a part of something much larger than ourselves. We are a member of something. Now, we see that and practice that in smaller ways in all of the groups we are part of. Take the lines from our second reading, the handout that we give to all of our new members. Because we are a covenanted congregation, members have certain responsibilities to the congregation and to one another. They are best fulfilled by voting at congregational meetings. Responsible participation includes imagining the needs of the entire congregation rather than focusing only on one's own needs or desires. Consider how issues affect all members of the congregation, as well as potential members and others in the world outside the congregation. That's a responsibility of membership here. And it translates to our country. If we are going to live in a democracy, then we have rights and we have responsibilities. Valerie Carr is an American civil rights activist, documentary filmmaker, lawyer, and faith leader. She was born and raised in Clovis, California, where her family settled as Sikh farmers in 1913. When a family friend was the first person who was killed in a hate crime after September 11th, 2001, she began to document hate crimes against Sikh and Muslim Americans. And that resulted in her documentary film, Divided We Fall: Americans in the Aftermath. Since then, she's made films and led story-based campaigns on hate crimes, racial profiling, immigration detention, solitary confinement, marriage equality, and internet freedom. She's a year younger than me. In a moving speech, Valerie Carr talks about lessons of revolutionary love in a time of rage. She says, "I believe that love must be practiced in 3 directions to be revolutionary. Loving just ourselves feels good, but it's narcissism. Loving only our opponents is self-loathing. Loving only others is ineffective. We need to practice all 3 forms of love. And so how do we practice it?" she asks. Number 1, in order to love others, see no stranger. We can train our eyes to look upon strangers on the street, on the subway, on the screen, and say in our minds, brother, sister, aunt, uncle. And when we say this, what we are saying is, you are a part of me I do not yet know. I choose to wonder about you. I will listen for your stories and pick up a sword when you are in harm's way. And so, number 2, in order to love our opponents, tend the wound. Can you see the wound in the ones who hurt you? Can you wonder even about them? And if this question sends panic through your own body, then your most revolutionary act is to wonder, listen, and respond to your own needs. Number 3, in order to love ourselves, breathe and push. When we are pushing into the fires in our bodies or the fires in the world, we need to be breathing together in order to be pushing together. How are you breathing each day, she asks. Who are you breathing with? Because when executive orders and news of violence hits our bodies hard, sometimes less than a minute apart, it feels like dying. In those moments, she says, my son places his hand on my cheek and says, "Dance time, Mommy?" And we dance. In the darkness, we breathe and we dance. Our family becomes a pocket of revolutionary love. Our joy is an act of moral resistance. How are you protecting your joy each day, she asks. Because in joy, we see even darkness with new eyes. And so the mother in me asks, what if this darkness is not the darkness of the tomb, but the darkness of the womb? What if our future is not dead, but still waiting to be born? What if this is our great transition? Unitarian Universalist denominational president, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, had this to say earlier this year in a piece called "Let's UU the Vote." These are difficult and dangerous times, she says. One of the challenges is that in times of change and uncertainty, there's a tendency for people to withdraw and grow fearful. This is why the rhetoric of hate, scarcity, and isolation grows in this country. However, it is exactly in such times that we need bold spiritual imagination and audacious leaders and communities that are showing a new way forward. We are less than 12 months away from the most critical elections in our lifetimes, she says. We must not be on the sidelines. Core Unitarian Universalist values of interdependence, democracy, human worth and dignity, the richness of pluralism and diversity, and the inborn right of all peoples to self-determination and agency are on the line. When we show up as people of faith with these values front and center, we are offering a viable alternative to narratives and policies of domination, supremacy, scarcity, and exploitation that threaten and diminish our lives and future. What does it mean to UU the vote? I think it means showing up and seeing voting as an act of faith. I think it means voting for yourself. And I think it means thinking of the most vulnerable person you know and voting in their best interest. The other day, I was visiting Brenda Silva, our pianist, as she recovers from knee surgery. She'll be back next week, by the way, so keep those healing prayers coming. I don't remember how the conversation turned to this, but I think it was because Shar was headed out to the Outer Cape Chorale rehearsal, and we were talking about the theme of their concert this season, which is America's Journey in Song, exploring music inspired by events throughout our nation's history. And Brenda pointed to a bookshelf, and she told me about a book that her grandkids love, based on Woody Guthrie's song, "This Land Is Your Land." And I have the book here with me today. It's a beautiful illustrated version of the lyrics of that song that we all know. I invite you to look through it later. But do you know about the extra lyrics? Brenda asked me. They really turn the song on its head. I had no idea what she was talking about. What extra lyrics? It's a question, she explained in Woody's original version. Is this land made for you and me? I thought about that question the rest of the night and into the next day. And when Saturday night came, Lisa and I went to the First Encounter Coffee House in Eastham to hear Ellis Paul play. And wouldn't you know it, he played that song. But first he explained how there are extra verses that most people don't know. And when you sing it with the extra verses, it's a protest song. It starts out with the beautiful images of golden valleys and sparkling sands and diamond deserts. And even the words he chooses bring to mind prosperity and riches, the richness of our country. And those are the verses we teach our kids. And we end it there because it's easier. But that's not the end of the song. There are more verses. As I went walking, I saw a sign there, and on the sign it said, "No trespassing." But on the other side, it didn't say nothing. That side was made for you and me. Ellis Paul took some time at his concert to share a little more about Woody Guthrie's life. He's a bit of a hero of Paul's. In fact, Paul has a tattoo of Woody Guthrie all over his right shoulder. Here's some of what he told us and some of what is said about Woody Guthrie at the back of this children's book that Guthrie's daughter Nora and artist Kathy Jacobson created. Woody Guthrie was born in 1912 in Okemah, Oklahoma. He was named after Woodrow Wilson, but everyone called him Woody. The Guthries had been fairly prosperous. Woody's father was a small-time politician and businessman, but when Woody was 6, the family's luck began to change. Their new house burned down, and a few years later, Woody's sister died in a fire. His mother was institutionalized when he was just 14. When Woody was 17, he moved to Texas, and that is where he learned to play the guitar. He liked to sing ballads, long songs that tell a story. When the Great Depression hit, Guthrie watched as the ground around him literally dried up and fierce winds piled dust over the land. Like others in the Dust Bowl, Woody packed up and headed for California. California was filling up with people from Oklahoma, Texas, and other struggling states. The travelers were called migrants, or Okies. They ended up in crowded camps. Their homes were tents and small rooms pieced together from scraps, and there weren't enough jobs to go around. In California, Woody got a job singing on the radio, and his show was especially popular in the migrant camps. And Woody started writing songs about the migrants, about their hard luck and their courage. In 1940, when he was 28, Guthrie went to New York City. There he sang for factory workers, trying to get better working conditions and higher pay. And he began to record songs. Guthrie was irritated by Irving Berlin's song, "God Bless America," which seemed to be endlessly playing on the radio while he watched people suffer during the Great Depression. So he actually wrote "This Land Is Your Land" as a retort, at first sarcastically calling it "God Blessed America for Me," before renaming it "This Land Is Your Land." He borrowed the tune from the Carter family and their 1930 gospel recording of "When the World's on Fire." The song reflected the richness of our country's natural wonders, but also the poverty of some of its people. In the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. By the relief office, I seen my people. As they stood there hungry, I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me? Woody's daughter, Nora Guthrie, says she has an idea why these words may not have been recorded at the 1944 session, and why the private property verse that was recorded was not issued. This is the early 50s, she says, and Senator Joseph McCarthy is out there. And it's considered dangerous in many ways to record this kind of material. If my dad had done that recording, she says, I don't think it would have meant anything to him if he was imprisoned, actually. He was quite used to living without and having nights in prison and things like that. Like most of the things, if we're talking about my dad, it gets very complex here. So I think, the Weavers originally just recorded the first 3 verses, which in one way was very, very helpful to my dad, because we had no money. So thank God that they recorded something, and our family was able to get some royalties from that. No one could have predicted how popular the song would become. Some have called This Land Is Your Land an alternative national anthem. It's the number 3 song of the entire 20th century, topped only by Judy Garland singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow and Irving Berlin's White Christmas, sung by Bing Crosby. This Land Is Your Land is sung around campfires and by school children everywhere. I definitely learned this song in school myself, although as I told you, I only learned about the extra verses last week. When Guthrie wrote, This Land Is Your Land, he ended with this verse, which faithfully answers his own question. Nobody living can ever stop me as I go walking that freedom highway. Nobody living can ever make me turn back. This land was made for you and me. May it be so. Happy voting. Amen, and blessed be.